A wise man is not a man who is capable of all things. A wise man is not a man who is fully aware of the thoughts of others. A good debater is not a man who can discern all things that others are arguing about. A detailed man is not a man who is able to discern all things that others are arguing about. The so-called wise man of a gentleman is not the one who can discern all the things that others are arguing about. The so-called man of detail of a gentleman is not the one who can examine in detail all the meanings that others are examining. The talent of a gentleman has a certain limit. A gentleman is not as good as a farmer when it comes to observing the height of the ground, identifying the fertility of the soil, and arranging the cultivation of grain. He is not as good as a merchant when it comes to buying and selling goods with money, evaluating the quality of goods, and determining the price. He is not as good as a craftsman when it comes to setting the size of a circle gauge, choosing the right place for an ink line, and skillfully using various tools. He is not as good as a craftsman when it comes to the gentleman is no better than the craftsman in terms of his ability to ignore the truth of right and wrong and to deprecate each other. As for the comparison of virtues to determine the ranking order, and the measurement of talents to confer the corresponding official positions, so that the wise and the unwise can each be placed in their positions, so that the talented and the mediocre can be properly arranged, so that everything in the world can be reasonably used, so that all kinds of unexpected situations can be dealt with in a timely manner, so that Xunzi and Mo Zhi cannot be free to express their opinions, so that Huisi and Deng Shui can also when speaking. One must be rational, and when doing something, one must prioritize, and these are the things that a gentleman is good at. Therefore, is it not because a gentleman can appear noble even without official position, rich even without salary, trusted by others even without speaking, establish his majesty even without anger, feel honored even in distress, and remain in happiness even in loneliness? That a gentleman concentrates the most noble, rich, solemn, and serious appearances in study. Is it not? Therefore, noble fame is not gained by many people ganging up on each other, not by self-aggrandizement, and not by coercing others with the prestige of being in a position of power, but only after hard study and accumulation. It is something that can be achieved only after hard study and accumulation. If you insist on fighting for fame, you will lose it. If you give up your fame to each other, you will get it smoothly. If you act according to the rules of morality, you can keep your fame. But if you act in an exaggerated and fraudulent way, you will eventually lose it. Therefore, a gentleman must pay attention to cultivating his inner thoughts and maintaining humility in his behavior, and must accumulate his virtues and govern with right morality. If this is done, then the noble fame will rise up like the sun and the moon, and the people of the world will respond enthusiastically like thunder. Therefore, even if a gentleman lives in seclusion, he will have a distinguished reputation. And even if he is in a humble position, he will have a distinguished honor, and even if he is humble, he will be far above others. The rude and vile take the opposite approach. They gang up on one another, but their cronies become fewer and fewer. They strive for noble fame by despicable means, but what they get makes them ashamed. They seek comfort and personal gain with single-mindedness, but end up putting themselves in a more dangerous position. Therefore, there are people who have little ability but are determined to do great things, just as those who do not have great strength but want to bear heavy burdens, will not end up in any good way other than having their backs broken by the burdens. The more they persist, the more people will point at their heads and laugh at them. Therefore, a wise ruler always takes the virtue of a person as the criterion for the arrangement of official positions. In order not to make appointments indiscriminately, thus preventing confusion, a loyal subject does have talent, and then dares to accept the appointment of the king, in order not to get himself into trouble. It is the highest level of politics that the sovereign's arrangement does not lead to chaos and the subject's talent keeps him from getting into trouble. He is organized, he does everything in an orderly manner, he is powerful, he makes everyone respect him, he is steadfast, he is peaceful and pleasant, he does things in a decent manner, he is happy, he adheres to his principles, he is clear, he uses his wisdom clearly. He is diligent, he follows the rules of propriety and law, he is peaceful, he understands the fundamentals of propriety, he is kind. He praises the good deeds of others, and is not only worried, but others will let his fame end. Having done all these, he can be called a saint. The virtue of a saint arises from concentration. What does it mean to be dedicated? The answer is, to adhere to the divine and remain firm. What does it mean to adhere to God and remain firm? The answer is, the method of governance that makes the world perfect and the whole body heal is divine, and the existence that makes all things irreversible is stable, and the one who can make it one is called a sage. What you do not hear is better than what you do hear, what you do hear is better than what you see is better than what you know, and what you know is better than what you put into practice. If you can apply what you have learned in practice, then you can achieve the ultimate in learning. Once you have practiced it, you can understand the truth of it, and once you understand the truth of it, you can be called a sage. The so-called sage is a person who can treat benevolence and righteousness as the basis of his actions, distinguish right from wrong in a proper way, and be consistent in his words and deeds without the slightest mistake between them. Therefore, if you hear what you hear but do not see it with your own eyes, even if you see it with your own eyes, even if you do not know the truth of it, even if you can remember it, it is bound to produce delusion. If you know the truth of it but do not put it into practice, even if you accumulate a lot of knowledge, you will get yourself into trouble. If you do not listen to the teachings of the wise and observe the practice of others, even if you get it right once in a while, it is not considered benevolent, and if you continue in this way, you will only fail 100 times. Therefore, if you pile up dirt, you can form a mountain. If you accumulate fine streams, you can form an ocean. If you accumulate one day and one night, you can be called a year. If you call the highest place heaven, if you call the lowest place earth, and if you call the 6 directions in the universe, upper, lower, east, west, south and north, you can be called the 6 poles. Even ordinary people can be called saints if they can accumulate good deeds little by little and reach the level of perfection. These are the things that can be achieved only after making efforts, only after putting them into practice, only after accumulating them, and only after reaching the state of perfection. Therefore, the so-called saint is actually the result of ordinary people accumulating good deeds little by little. People can become farmers by accumulating experience in hoeing and plowing, carpenters by accumulating experience in chopping, merchants by accumulating experience in selling goods, and gentlemen by accumulating experience in observing manners and righteousness. The sons of craftsmen usually succeed their fathers, and the people of the city will be comfortable with the customs and traditions they practice. Just as the people of Chu followed the customs of Chu, the people of Yu followed the customs of Yu, and the people of the Middle Kingdom followed the customs of the Middle Kingdom. All these are not determined by human nature, but are the result of accumulation and refinement.